Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I was enormously touched to have been asked by Minister Susi Pujiastuti to join you at this year's Our Ocean meeting. And I really am very disappointed that previous commitments mean that I cannot join you in Bali. However, having had the good fortune of being at last year's meeting in Malta and hearing at first hand of the truly inspirational commitments, such as the Coral Reef Life Declaration and the Blue Economy financing principles, being made to protect the ocean, I did not want to miss the opportunity to offer a brief message and to let you know that my commitment to a healthy ocean remains as strong as it was several decades ago when I first raised concern about the issue. Now, if I may, I would like to thank the government of Indonesia for having had the resolve to host this meeting, particularly when having to deal with the aftermath of the tragic events in Palau. In this regard, I know that I reflect the feelings of everyone present in expressing my deepest sympathy for those who have lost their loved ones and their homes. I would also like to acknowledge the enduring leadership and commitment of Secretary Kerry, who, amongst many other achievements, has done so much to raise the profile of the plight of the ocean. And the fact that the plight of the ocean grows ever worse has been graphically detailed in the recent Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC report, which tells us that even limiting global warming to 1.5 or 2 degrees Celsius means horrific changes in the nearer future to the planet's ecosystems, and in particular to that of the ocean. I must say it has been profoundly disturbing how this report, so clear in its predictions and so unanimous in its findings, has been met with seeming indifference. One might have been forgiven, surely, for thinking that such a stark warning, coming on top of so many others over recent years, would have galvanized action to mobilize the substantial changes that are evidently needed. Changes that are both feasible and affordable and should involve an urgent review and reorientation of the current perverse subsidy regimes which have been compounding the disaster we face. Thanks to incredible progress in science and technology, we now really know the damage we are doing and increasingly understand the extent to which we rely on the ocean, not only for food, transport and recreation, but as the world's greatest carbon sink, sheltering us from the impacts of climate change by absorbing 30% of our carbon and 90% of the heat we produce. Now, it seems to me that our relationship with the ocean is at a crossroads, and humanity has a clear choice. Business as usual, with continuing ocean decline that will damage every area of human development and well-being, or deep-seated change in our behavior, our priorities, our investments and subsidies to balance ocean protection with our socio-economic goals. Evidently, we have reached the tipping point rather sooner than expected, and this realization demands that we respond adequately, responsibly, and with real urgency. So far, the world has witnessed the creation of a plethora of ocean initiatives, commitment platforms and summits. One can reasonably hope that substantial action will emerge from this flurry of convening. Reassuringly, philanthropists and development agencies are rising to the challenge, and under Canada's leadership, the G7 has recognized the ocean's importance. Meanwhile, the UN Secretary-General has appointed a special envoy for the ocean to catalyze the attainment of the UN Ocean Goal, Sustainable Development Goal 14, with its 10 targets. We also have the Friends of Ocean Action, brought together by the World Economic Forum, the Special Envoy for the Ocean, and the Deputy Prime Minister of Sweden, to fast-track solutions in support of SDG 14. And then the high-level panel for a sustainable ocean economy, recently launched by the Prime Minister of Norway and the President of Palau, bringing together heads of government who are committed to developing, catalysing, and supporting solutions for ocean health and wealth in policy, governance, technology, and finance. Needless to say, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted that the World Resources Institute, of which I recently became patron, is playing a key role in both of these initiatives. If I may, I would like to suggest a few achievable steps in addition to all your considerable and commendable efforts to end the scourge of plastic in the ocean that appear essential to protect the ocean from the ravages of climate change, pollution, and overexploitation. Firstly, I can only urge you to continue your efforts to end illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. Illegal fishing has no place in our ocean, in our ports, or on our plates. Equally, harmful subsidies benefit the few and harm the many, and 2019 may be the moment where the World Trade Organization could be transformational for our global ocean. Secondly, and most urgently, we need to protect the most vulnerable and precious areas of our ocean to allow biodiversity to replenish and build resilience. For decades, scientists, and not just scientists, have been calling for marine protected areas to cover at least 20% of the ocean, and the world met them halfway with the Aichi biodiversity target to achieve 10% protection by 2020. But just 2 years from the deadline, at most only 7% of the ocean is protected, and much of that nominally. So we must redouble our efforts to reach the 2020 target and then expand that to at least 30% by 2030. Finally, beyond nations' territorial waters, the high seas languish in a totally unprotected, lawless state, exposing our greatest natural heritage to unchecked exploitation. But here too we have an immense opportunity for change. States have just begun formal negotiations of a new high seas treaty, which is intended to include agreements on how to protect and share the bounty of the sea and create mechanisms for establishing marine protected areas on the high seas. Surely the global commons, which account for 50% of the Earth's surface, merit all countries to support this new agreement. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a new grandchild on the way, as I suspect will many of you, either children or grandchildren. Whatever the case, how can we, in all conscience, let them enter this world with a scientifically predicted catastrophe on our hands and not adopt the necessary, urgent, practical steps to save their future from indescribable disaster? We have the money, we have the solutions, but do we have the will to take the measures that our successors are crying out for and deserve?